Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can see and hear me. Let me make sure. Okay, great. All right. So, first of all, thank you for joining. Whether you're going to be joining on the live while I'm on or catching the replay, thank you so much for being a part of this live. We're going to be talking about PMP certification strategies as well as a little bit of AI. I'm going to talk a little bit about Notebook LM. Revisit that a little bit because there have been some new developments with that software that I talked about from last year. But first of all, Happy New Year. Those of you that know me or you don't know me, I'll introduce myself. My name is Latina Lewis, and I am a project manager, and this is the Future Focused podcast. Where I talk about project management and AI. If you are, once again, if you're watching live or on the replay, I'm glad you're here, and I'm really excited to talk about these things. I'm going to be coming out not as frequently as I did the last quarter, but I am going to be coming out and talking about AI and project management. Or project management and AI separately. And I have a few topics. And this topic I thought was very timely. And I'll tell you why. This is the season a lot of times where people have on their schedule to get their PMP certification. That is something that people are looking to do. It's on their goal list. It's part of what it is that they want to do before the end of the year. And a lot of times people want to get it done prior to um, getting into the rolling spring break season. So this is the time, right? This is the time where you either are studying for it and you have the goal that I'm going to take this test right before I go on vacation, in March or maybe even sooner than that. So I wanted to come out and talk about a few strategies. And before I do that, I want to give you a little bit of information about me and who I am. Again, some of you know me. Because we've met before, or we've been in conferences before, and some of you don't. Some of you might be brand new to my channel, but just to let you know who I am, I am a project manager. I've been in project management for more than 15, 20 years or right now. Um, my prior employment, because right now I own a full-time project management consultant business, Kinsman Point Consulting. Prior to that, in my former life, I was employed by Cerner, which then became Oracle Health. And my last job there was a project manager working with establishing electronic health records for organizations like behavioral health, rehab, hospitals, things of that nature. So, been involved in project management for a while, even prior to that, as a consultant. Uh, Project management is my bag. I love it. I love what I do. And so that's why I wanted to start a business because it allows me to spread my wings and do things that in project management in a way that I might not have been quite able to do in an employment position because, the standards and rules and regs, not that they're bad. It's just that I had a vision for how I wanted to run and uh, how I wanted to be in this role. Number one. Also, I have taught. Last year, I taught the project management certification course, the 35 contact hours that you need to sit for the exam. I've taught that course. I taught it last year, and I am planning to start that process again this year to start teaching that class. Now I have more information about that later on, but yeah, that is something I do as well. So PMP education is also I'm very fond of that as well. With that being said, now that you know who I am, let's get into the conversation. I am going to be working from some notes and I may be looking at multiple screens. I have multiple screens in my office. So I may be working off of a couple of different screens just to make sure we're connected, one, and to make sure I'm following my notes too. Now, this information that I'm going to share to you with regards to the PMP certification. This is part of a presentation that I'm doing next week for my local PMI chapter. I'm very involved with my local PMI chapter in the city where I live here, and they wanted to have someone come and speak about tackling that PMP exam, having the right mindset and frame of mind around that. So I said, I would love to do that. So I'm going to be doing that next week. So I'm going to be providing a few of those tips here, not all of them. That presentation next week is going to be an hour long, so I'm not going to tell you all of the things I have in my notes, but I am going to talk about a few of them. And if I happen to see some questions in the chat, if I happen to pick up on those, I will answer those here. If I don't answer your question from the chat, whether you're watching live or if you watch the replay, I will answer those either by way of just answering them in the chat, or I may put some additional content out via video or a post to answer that question. Okay, but let's get into it because I do have a couple things I do want to talk about. First, let's talk about eligibility. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly here because I'm going to go to the source with regards to how are you eligible for this exam. Some of you that are already on the exam track already know the eligibility requirements, so you're already there. But let me go ahead and show my screen. This is what I want to show. I want to make sure. Okay. So the eligibility requirements. Let me go ahead and get rid of my nameplate here. So there's a couple of ways in which you can be eligible for the exam. One is with a high school diploma or equivalent. One is with a bachelor's degree, and one is with this what's called a GAC accredited program. So with the high school or diploma or equivalent, what happens is that you would need a minimum of 60 months or 5 years of experience leading and managing projects within the past 8 years. And then you also need that 35 hours of project management education and training, which you can get through a course like my own that I teach, or some other person that teaches or group that teaches that 35-hour project management education. Or you can also get it if you have another certification, like if you have a CAPM or just one of these others that are listed here. The second way in which you might be eligible, and the way most of you that are listening may be eligible, is by way of a bachelor's degree or higher. If you have a degree, then you would only need 36 months of experience leading and managing projects within the past 8 years. And then you still need that 35 hours of project management education and training. For all three of these, you need that 35 hours of project management education and training. And you can also, with the first two, have another certification, right? The second one, or the last one, is with that bachelor's degree. If you bachelor's degree or higher from a GAC accredited program, and basically what that is it's an accredited program that PMI has blessed, if you will. So if you are in this category, I would recommend going in and checking that out online to get the details on that, so that you make sure that you really do qualify for that. With that, there's 24 months or 2 years of experience leading and managing projects in the past 8 years. All right. And then again, that 35 contact hours. All right. So notice that you can only go back as far as 8 years with regards to the amount of project work that you actually are doing. I'm going to stop my share for a quick second. Let me make sure that's going to let me do that. Stop screen share. Yeah. So yeah, you can only go back 8 years. So you're not going to go back if you've been in project management for a while and getting the certifications, you're not going to be able to go back, 10, 20 years of project work. It's really going to be in the last 8. And it's projects where you are leading. So you want to make sure on your application that you're putting in things that you did and not something someone else did, in terms of how you led that project to its completion. All right. And all of that is on the site. There is a checklist to make sure that you are filling out that application properly. I'm not going to get into the details of the application at this point. All of that is online. All right. Now let's discuss let's go on to the next topic that I want to talk to you about. And that is the mindset you need to have with this particular exam, right? This is a 4-hour, 180 question exam. Okay. So it is a global certification. That's important to know, because I hear people say, and I don't necessarily disagree, that they feel like the PMP concepts are not real, or just they're not something that I do on my job. That may be true. You may do an adaptation of what's being taught or what's being administered within PMI, but it's important to know that this is a global certification. So not making anything that you do on your job wrong at all. It just may be an adaptation of what you do. And because this is a global certification, there's global standards, there's global overarching concepts that are talked about that may not be as familiar to you. Okay, so just keep that in mind as you're learning, as you're going through your study. That's just the mindset that this is a global certification. And quite frankly, I'm going to share my screen here again. I'm going to recommend, honestly, that you absolutely do not ask yourself, how would I do this on my job? Don't ask yourself that question. You want to come out and above your job. What your organization is neither right nor wrong. All right, I'm going to get to that third bullet point in a second. But here's the thing. With the PMI, and I call this the PMI universe because you are stepping into the PMI universe. The PMI universe says that I have the power. I steer the ship. I have all the I won't say all the answers. I am the bridge builder. I am the servant leader, right? I am the person that can move us from point A to point B. I don't have to go to my sponsor. I don't have to I have the procurement department, I have the PMO office. Those things that you may not necessarily have on your job, I handle the budget. I know what scheduled performance index is, right? I understand that. So go into this exam with that mindset. Go into this exam with the fact that you are the leader, all right? And you have the ability to move the needle forward without having to defer. Unless the scenario calls for it, you would not have to defer to someone else. You can take the next step. So your scope is to understand that this is a globally recognized, content, and to get your PMP. Okay, period. Right, you want to get this global certification, and then once you get it, you can take and extrapolate all the things from that certification, and then utilize it within your job. One of the first things that I utilized when I got my PMP, I got my PMP back in 2020, right before it switched over to the current seventh edition. I was one of the last ones in the last quarter of 2020 to get it in that older version, if you will. One of the first things I did was I introduced retrospectives to my projects. We hadn't done that. And I didn't just do it at the very end of the project. I would do retrospectives intermittently throughout the project as we got to a certain milestone. I would talk about, what we did wrong, what went well, what we could have done better, all those things. And then also definitely at the end, we would have a meeting of the minds, if you will, a final meeting with the team just to talk about what went well. And that was helpful for me. And to understand kind of the way my team worked and the way we moved through a project. And when I went to the next project, I would implement some of those things, or I would pull back on some things I did before. So that's one of the first things. So when you get this certification, get it. Know that you are in that PMI universe and you have all the power. You have all the things at your disposal. And then once you get that certification, you can celebrate, and then you can extrapolate what you need and adapt it for what you need on your job. All right. So that's enough of that. Now, another thing to assume, and I'm going to, Yep. I'm just going to go right into this next slide. You want to, and these are the slides actually for my presentation I'm going to be doing next week. I'm not sharing all these slides, just a few. But one of the other things you want to assume is that you are in a strong matrix organization or a project-oriented organization. What do I mean by that? That is terminology that you will get and learn as you start studying for the exam, as you go through the 35 contact hours. What I mean is that, so let me explain the difference between a functional, a matrix structure, or project-oriented structure. And I'll be really high level. I'm not going to read this slide to you. A functional structure means that the functional manager has authority over their departments, and the resources are allocated by that functional manager. Your functional manager is another word for your direct supervisor. So there's limited control, okay, that the project manager has, because they are always deferring to that functional manager, and the resources are allocated and taken away by that functional manager. In a Let me go over to project oriented, and then I'll come back to the middle. In a project oriented structure, you as the PM have full authority over the project. You have full authority over the resources, um, and you have high control over how that team works. Okay, now in the matrix, there's a dance, if you will, that you're going to be doing with the functional manager. There's shared authority, and there's different levels within a matrix structure. There's the weak matrix, where there's limited control with the functional manager having more influence. There's the balanced, and then there's the strong. I am saying to you that on for the exam, you want to see yourself, unless the scenario says different, you want to see yourself as in a strong matrix or in a project oriented structure, because that's going to help you understand that question better in terms of what you would do next. What would you as the project manager do to, mitigate that situation, whatever the scenario is asking you for? You are going to have that strong ability. That's how the test is, or the exam is slanted, as to you having that power. Again, you've got all the power, so you want to see yourself that way in those situations. All right. Okay, very good. So let's go on to. All right, let me stop sharing my screen, because I'm going to pull out of that for a second and go into a couple of other points here. Yeah. Now, I mentioned this before, that this is a 4-hour, 180 question exam, right? So as of right now, unless something changes when the new exam structure comes out. So it's going to be important that as you are going through this exam, for those of you that are studying for it, the key really is to take a lot of practice questions. I'm going to probably say this more than once. You want to get into taking as many practice questions as you possibly can, and even practice tests, small ones, large ones. You even want to take a full practice exam, as if you are taking the full exam. Realistically, as you are going through these scenarios, you only want to spend about a minute and some change on each question. You don't want to linger, because the longer you linger, the higher the likelihood you will not finish all the questions in time. That's important to take. That's an important takeaway. Um, so you want to come up with a way in which you want to attack each question. Here's what I did. When I took the exam, the strategy that I had was I would read the question first. Like, I would literally go to that last sentence or couple of sentences where it says, how would you mitigate the situation, or what would you do next, or whatever that last question was. I would read that first, and then I would read the rest of the scenario. And the reason I did that was because it allowed me to pick up context clues. I'm looking for what the project manager would do first. What would I do first? And I also talked about each question as if I was about that it was about me. This is what I would do in this scenario, knowing what I know about the global standard of that PMI is given. So I would read the question first, I would read the scenario, and then when I got to the choices, I was able to make some decisions on what did not make sense for the scenario. That's just what helped me. Another thing too to remember is that you want to be really cognizant of where you are in the project based on the scenario. Are you in planning phase? Okay. Are you in the execution phase of the project? Are you at the business case, or have you not even been given authority to start the project yet? Read that scenario and make sure you know where you are, because I guarantee you that some of the answers, at least one of the answer choices that are in there, will likely be something that is outside of the realm of where you are in that project scenario and that question. The project is in planning, but it's giving you answers that are basically taking you back to, the business case, or something not being authorized yet. If one of the answers is saying that you need to go through a change control process, but the scenario says that you're still in planning, then you're not going through a change control process yet. Yet. Okay. So while it sounds like a good answer, it might not be a good answer right now for the question that you're reading. Okay. So really important. And the biggest way to go through that is to honestly take practice questions. That will help you hone your strategy. It's like training for a marathon, right? How do you train for a marathon? I've never trained for a marathon, so just saying, I've just heard about this. But the way you do it, from my understanding, is that every day or every week there's something that you're doing to train. There's something that you're doing to build muscle, to build stamina. That's what this exam is all about. You want to build your stamina with these questions. So you want to be able to read a question and know, okay, this is where I'm in this part of the project. That response doesn't make any sense. I can rule that out in a minute, and some change later you're on to the next. Or if you are stuck and you're kind of confused, that's another thing. That's another point. It's not. Wait, let me take a drink of water. Hold on. I'm excited, y'all. Okay. That's another thing. If you are stuck on a question, drinking that water was a bad idea. But if you are stuck on a question, do not leave that question blank. Answer, say something, and then use your tools within the question. One of them is, excuse me, guys. one of the tools you have is to highlight or to mark it for review, but don't leave it blank. In the event you don't have the opportunity to go back to that question later, you still have an answer there. Okay. All right. Let me get off of that. That water went down the wrong windpipe, and I was getting excited talking about this. Oh my God. Okay. So that was my test strategy. That's what I wanted to tell you there. Let me see. Let me make sure. No, I don't need to read that slide. That slide was good. I just talked about it. Understanding terminology as you go through this process, and I'll hit this really quick because I'm gonna need to move to my AI stuff here in a few minutes. But as you are studying, if there's terminology that you don't know the definition of, research that. One of the things I did, this may be super old school, but I created flashcards. If I went through practice questions and there was a word in that practice question I didn't know, I wrote it down. And on the back of that note card, I wrote down what the definition was. That helps me to understand that definition. And then keep in mind also, again, this is a global certification. A lot of times when you dig into the definition of a term, it may be something else that you may call it something different on your job. And I told you not to come in here talking about how would I do this on my job. And I meant that. But in the case of definitions, you may want to make a correlation to help you remember what that definition means. Okay. So I just want to say that in order to get those definitions, do not go past a single test question or practice question that you go over and not know what those words mean. Because they're going to come back in a scenario. And if you don't know the definition of some of the terminology, like acceptance criteria, or let me see some of the words I have in here. I might share my screen here again. Which one was that? That was, yeah, let me show you this one real quick. Let me go share. Yep, that's the one. So words like acceptance criteria, activity list, which may also be called a task list or a to-do list, business case. You might be calling it your project justification or project rationale, a risk register, or an impediments log. You'll see that if you're working within waterfall or agile, you'll see different words used at different times. A lot of times, impediments log will be within the agile space. Um, but so you just want to have a feel and understanding, and you want to have a working definition of all the terminology that you come across as you are studying for this PMP. All right. Okay, so let me get into a couple of others. Let me find this slide. I believe it's a little further down. I wanted to talk about a couple of recommendations, a couple of things here. Let me see if it's here. Yeah. So let's talk about practice exams. I've got 2 points. I'm going to move on to looking at notebook.lm. So with practice exams, I can't say that word. Um, my recommendation is to take at least two full practice exams. Okay, and you might be thinking, you want me to take 2 4-hour exams? I do. I do. It's my recommendation. You can throw it away. You don't have to do it. But I recommend taking it in the beginning of your study point, kind of seeing where you score, where you stand. Do your studies, and oftentimes, depending on if you're using something like a PM study hall, which I've heard is a really good tool to use, or any type of practice online practice exam that gives you your score and also where your weak areas are, then that can lead you on how to study. And then after that, maybe a week before your actual exam, you take another one and to see how you fare. In the middle of that, you want to take smaller mini exams. 10 questions here, 5 questions here, one question, at least one question a day, to get that muscle of doing this exam in your system. So that is my recommendation for practice exams. That is the best way to help yourself get through, and have a muscle for this exam, because again, it's 180 questions, so you want to have a muscle for getting through it. And then my last point on this, yes, this is my last point about PMP certification, and then I'm going to move into looking at notebook.lm AI stuff. So in person or virtual. Now, I took my exam. When I passed my exam, I took it in person. It's really a matter of preference and convenience. And I took this information from online. So I went to PMI's website, but you want to go out there and get the latest and greatest. But in the online process, you're going to check in 30 minutes prior. You're going to do a system check. They're going to ask you to take a selfie and show your photo ID. And they're going to do what's called a workplace verification. So I'll explain workplace verification right after I get through that next set. The online exam rules is that no one can enter the room. So I'm in an office space right now. So no, if you've got, people, pets in the with you, then no one can enter the room, and you can only leave for a scheduled break. So when you get in that seat to get ready to take that test, you cannot get up until you have a scheduled break that is given to you after so many questions go by, right? There's no extra monitors. There's no open applications on your computer. Okay. Your phone should be in arm's reach, not right in front of you, but just in arm's reach in case you need to have a phone call with support or what have you. Just have it in a spot where you can reach it, but it can't be like right in front of you or around you. You can't read aloud. So if you're a type of person that you read aloud or you move your lips, the proctor who is watching you is gonna tell you to stop. Hands away from your face. So you can't, if you see me on camera, you can't do one of these. Okay. Because the idea is that if you're doing that, you might be speaking behind your hand and somebody could be in the room feeding you answers. That's the whole reason why. And to speak to the proctor, you would use chat. So if anyone has actually taken the exams, like some of you may be watching that have actually taken it, if you can provide your experience with the online version, let us know in the chat. I think people would benefit from knowing a real firsthand experience. Yeah. So in person, you arrive early, always arrive early. Me, I'm the quintessential project manager. I I did a drive by. I drove to, even though I knew where the test center was, I drove to it anyway just to see. I wanted to make sure, I wanted to get used to see the space, see where it was, all that stuff. But you want to arrive early because you do have to check in. You're going to get a locker, um, likely, depending on the facility and how it's set up. You may get a locker for like your wallet, key, snacks, because you're not going to be able to bring a whole lot of stuff into the testing space where you're seated. There's a scheduled break, and you don't have to take it, but I recommend you do. I mean, this is a long test, so if you do nothing, and when I took my test, I got up, went out, took a drink of my water. I had a little snack, didn't eat that because I wasn't feeling it, but I at least got up and walked around for a minute. I probably was out for about a good 3 minutes. I think the break. I don't remember how long the break was. Maybe it was 10 minutes. Seems long to me, but it might have been a 10-minute break. But I didn't take all of it. Is the point. I was able. I took the longest it long it took as long as it took me to go drink my water, um, and then just kind of get my wits about myself and then go back. That's what I did. And you will be there likely with others taking either the PMP exam or other exams. It's done, if I'm not, unless they've changed it, it's done by Pearson. Pearson is the company that does the testing. So a lot of people, whether it's medical exams for nurses, doctors, whoever, there's other types of certifications, like maybe even real estate. I don't know, but there will be other people taking other types of exams there. The room that I like, my particular testing facility, the room wasn't super huge, so everyone had their little space to be kind of focused in, and it was super quiet. So yeah. So really, in person or virtual is really a matter of convenience or comfort level. I will say that with the online process, just from people that have mentioned stuff about it in the past, you want to make sure that you do that system check. You can do a system check actually well before the exam day, which I recommend, just to make sure that there's no firewalls or nothing that's going to hinder you. Hair in my face. There's nothing that's going to hinder you from getting access to what you need. Okay, so the biggest thing for me that made it I mean, granted, when you go into a testing center, you're only using one monitor there, but I'm really comfortable in my office. So if I had to take my monitors off, my additional monitors off, that would make me feel less comfortable. Excuse me. So it would be for me it was always going to be in person, just because, right? Okay. With that, let me unshare my screen. I'm going to end up sharing it here in a second again. But okay, so I hope that was helpful. Okay, so I wanted to, um, yeah, I hope that was helpful. That wasn't all. Those were just a few of what I felt were the high, not even high points. I have a couple of really good points I'm going to get into more next week when I do this presentation with the PMI group. So I hope that was helpful. If you have other questions, please put them in the chat. I will answer them either before we leave this live, or I will answer them, after the fact. I'll put a post out. And if there's some other things that come to mind, even after I do the presentation next week, that I feel I may put some more content out related to, I likely will put more content out related to this PMP exam, because I do know that it's something that people are thinking about, and it's on your to-do list to get done. All right. Okay, with that being said, I am going to get into the AI portion of this. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time uh, on that. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm probably going to be sharing for the remainder. Let me do one more thing before I do that, and I'm gonna, when we're done, I'm gonna circle back to the PMP. I have one more final thought on that. Um, Okay, so the AI tool that I'm going to be talking about with you tonight is NotebookLM. So let me share. There it is. All right. So you know what? I'm going to unshare because I need to make sure that I am sharing with sound, because I will need to play around with the sound here. Yep, set the screen. share. Okay, perfect. Okay. So NotebookLM, it's notebooklm.google.com. You may be able to see it right up here. Basically what this does, it's a really good research tool, honestly. And what it does, it creates a podcast. Some of you may have used it before, but it actually will research documentation that you give it. So it's only going to be focused on whatever source you give it. Um, and then it's going to do things like create a podcast. It's going to create a briefing document. And the newest feature is that you can actually interact with the material. And I'll show you how that works. So when you first open up notebook.lm, it's going to look like this, brand new. There's no pricing on this at this point. So it's all free. And then you would click create. I have a notebook already open from a different email account where I use this under. Well, this is a test account where I use when I demo this. So this just happens to be set up to a blog, but let me click outside of this. So when you start to get different sources, then you're going to get these little notebooks added. These are just a few where I had a blog post, I had a terms of service that I wanted to get more detail about because I didn't want to read it all. A video. So for the terms of service, I believe, let me click on it here. It'll show you the source. So the source here, is this going to work? Let me see. Oh yes, very good. So this is the source. This happens to be a PDF. So it'll take PDF documents. It'll also, and this is one I'm going to, not this terms of service. Let me go back. Sorry, let me click out of that. This blog was actually one of my blogs that I had written a while ago, and I had pasted the text in there. So this is pasted text. And when I click on it, it basically shows you what the pasted text is, right? So it'll have the source there, and it'll take different things. So what I'm going to do is I am going to actually pull a source in. Another thing it'll do here. Let me go back to the terms of service, just because. Another thing that it will do is it'll actually load. If you go here where it says load conversation, this is where it actually creates the podcast, right? Where it actually will create a conversation between two people talking about the thing that you've placed in here. In this case, this is a Google terms of service. When I taught this to a group of women last quarter, and I use this as an example. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start from scratch. Now, once you click load, you don't have to stay here. You can go do other things. Like I'm going to literally click out of this, and I'm going to actually go and create new, because I want to show you what this does for those of you that haven't used it before. So this is where you can upload your sources. So you can drag and drop if you have a PDF. It'll also take a Google Doc, a Google Slide. It'll take a website, a YouTube link, or you can paste text. So what I'm going to do, I actually found an article. Where is that article? Let me see. There it is. Okay. I'm going to actually, I don't know that I've ever done it this way before. Let's see. I'm going to do a website, and I'm just going to paste the URL. Okay. It's actually a Harvard Business Review article that says how much supervision, the name of the article is how much supervision should companies give AI agents. And it was actually written on it was just written today, January 15th. So it's new. All right. So let's insert that. I just found it online. So I said, let me just grab that and use that for this. So it's going to, it doesn't like, oh, that's interesting. I wonder if it's because it's a Harvard Business Review link, and maybe Harvard Business Review is not allowing this link to be used in this way. I've had this happen before. One way around that is you could literally copy and paste the data into it. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually come out of this, and what I want to show you, I'm going to do it by way of, I'm going to do this terms of service one again, because I want to show you another feature. So think about it. What can you use this for? If you have any sort of contract that doesn't have trade secrets in it. Because I always say, if you're going to be uploading anything in an AI environment, you want to be able to de-identify it. You want to be able to, just things that you don't want to put in proprietary information or trade secrets. But if there's like a contract where you want to just kind of get the gist of how it works, or what's in the contract, you can use this. This will create a briefing document. So I can click here and it starts to generate the note. And then I can click on that to see that. And if you've used this before, the layout of this has changed a little bit. So it's going to generate a new note. Okay. Google Terms of Service, a summary. So it literally goes through and gives you a summary. So if that Terms of Service was 70 pages long, I don't remember how long that Terms of Service was, but it gave you, 7 key points here. Okay. Then you can go back to the studio. You can also create an FAQ. Think about this. If you have, let's say you've got documents either on your website, or let's say you have SOPs or anything that end users or internal employees or staff need to interact with, you can create an FAQ document. Okay. This one's understanding Google's terms of service, and it literally creates the question and the answer. Okay. This is really cool. All right. And if you and you can actually utilize this to do other things in AI with it. So it actually creates an FAQ. Here's the cool part that I want to talk about. Well, all of it's cool, but it also does a timeline. There's a lot of different things. You can go into what's called interactive mode, and you can do this even if you don't have this little podcast open up here. But I'm going to just go into interactive mode. This is a beta version of this. And then what happens when I click join? It's actually going to begin talking, and then I'm going to interact with it. So I'm going to allow it to talk for a little bit. I'm going to give it some time to just, I don't know, the 2 people in here to have their conversation. And then I'm going to interrupt it with a question. All right. Let me go ahead and play audio. Oh, that's interesting. It's not letting me play the audio. Let me refresh my page really quick. See, this is what happens when you test, and I tested this prior to, of course, right? Let's see. Is this? Let me go out. Yep. Let me go into a different. I think it's just. It might have needed to have been refreshed. All right. So I'm back in terms of service. I'm going to go over to interactive mode, and then I'm going to play audio.
Okay, real talk for a sec. Who here has actually read the whole Google Terms of Service? Like the entire thing. It's kind of like a digital Mount Everest.
Yeah.
Like impressive, sure.
But right.
Most of us would rather just like admire it from a safe distance.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing, understanding at least like the main points of those terms. It's actually more important than you might think.
It is.
Because let's face it, we're all practically living in Google land these days.
We are.
So think of this deep dive as your like your express pass to knowing all the rules of the game,
Yeah. And it's interesting too just how much Google is like intertwined with our efforts.
Oh, our listeners got something to share. Let's hear it.
Hey, can you just give me like the highlights of this Google Terms of Service? Like just hit the high points for me if you could, please.
Oh, absolutely. That's a great question. And, we totally get it.
Yeah, not everyone has the time to read through the whole thing.
Exactly. So let's boil it down to the most important parts for you.
Yeah, so think of it like a roadmap to understanding Google's world.
Yeah, a very, very brief one.
First, Google provides a ton of useful services like search, maps, and email.
Yeah, and they're constantly improving them.
Right. Using things like AI to make them even better.
But all of this is a two-way street.
Right. They expect us to follow the rules.
And those rules are found in these terms. So first and foremost, be respectful.
Yeah, and don't break the law or anyone else's rights.
And you own your content, but give Google a license to use it.
Correct, which lets them operate and improve their services.
And you're responsible for your Google account, so keep it secure.
And if there are any issues, Google will usually give you notice before taking action.
Yeah, and those are some of the real key highlights.
Yeah, so it's a lot, but those are some of the big important points for you to remember.
And with that, let's dive into some of the specifics, shall we?
Yeah, like, when you tap an address in your Google Calendar.
Oh, back to our listener. What's up?
Yeah, can you tell me, can I opt out of Google using my content? Can I tell them that they can't do that?
Okay, that's a really insightful question, and it's something that, I think a lot of people wonder about.
Yeah, it's a very common concern. You want to know how much control you have over your data.
Exactly. So the short answer is that you can't fully opt out in the way you're probably thinking.
Right. Google does require this license, as we've discussed, to operate their services.
But it's not like they are taking your content without any limitations.
Yeah, you still own the content itself, and the license they have has specific parameters.
Right. Not a blanket free pass for them to do whatever they want.
Exactly. And importantly, if you remove your content, their license to it generally stops.
Right. So if you delete a photo from your Google Photos, for example, they will stop making it publicly available.
There are a couple.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop it. Phyllis, thanks for the question. Yeah, when I gave the name of it, yeah, it's actually notebook.google.com to get there. But yeah, that's how it works. Thanks for the question. That's how it works, guys. So you can interact with this content and ask it questions as it is going through that podcast feel just by simply clicking join. It's like, oh, our listener has a question. And what I found very funny is that all of my questions were insightful. All of my questions were great. Oh, that's a great question. Oh, that's great. I mean, I love the feedback. My love language is words of affirmation. So I'm totally fine with that. But you can interact with the content. So think about it. If you're doing research, you might not ever like post a FAQ or do anything like that, but you might want to use this to do a little research on your own. I recently, for a client that I have, needed to do some research on some rules and regulations as it relates to Medicare in a particular state or Medicaid in a particular state. So what I did is I pulled down that data. I pulled down that policy guide, I dropped it in here, and then I could have a conversation. That's public information. That policy guide, anyone can get to. But I dropped it in Notebook so that I could then create an FAQ if I wanted to. But I had it give me go through that podcast. And that podcast, I think, was, if I go back to the studio, this one happens to be a 40-minute one, but however long it was, it's shorter than what it would take me to read it. So I was able to interact with it, listen to it, ask questions, take notes. Really great. So I like this new feature of Notebook. So that's NotebookLM.google.com. Check it out. Like I said, there's no pricing on it at this point. It's completely free, so you can really get into it. All right. So that's the AI tool that I wanted to mention. So we're coming up on I'm going to be wrapping this up. There's one last thing I do want you to do. I am going to be doing these Future Focus podcasts on an interval. Right now, it's not going to be once a week, but I will be doing them on a frequency. And every time I get on these types of platforms, I do want your feedback. So whether you're watching this live or whether you are hitting the replay, you can scan this QR code or you can go out to this website, talk.ac/Latina Lewis, and put in the code FFPM and give me some feedback. Let me know what you liked, what you didn't like, so I can do more of what you like and less of what you don't. If there are other things you want to say to me or tell me with regards to the material, things that you thought were really great, or if information that I may have missed. This is a spot too where you can ask questions as well and say, hey, I really wish that you had covered such and such. Okay. If you say that, then I will put some more content out about it. All right. One final thought, as I'm going to leave that up for a second, but the last thought, I told you I was going to circle back around to the PMP. With that PMP exam, once you take it, you never have to take it again as long as you keep up on the certification requirements. And the certification requirement is 60 PDUs over a 3-year period. I tell you, it is so easy to get 60 PDUs in a 3-year period. You can self-report. Best believe I am going to, this right here, what I'm doing, I'm putting this as a PDU because I'm talking about PMP related topics. I'm talking about project management related topics. If you create content that's PMP related, if you read books, go to seminars, if you are a member of your PMI organization, even if you aren't, because you don't have to be a member oftentimes of your local chapter to go to the local chapter events. But if you have your PMP, and I'm talking to you, and you need to get your PDUs, going to those chapter events will allow you to get those. And a lot of times, if you're a member of the organization, they'll report them for you. You don't have to go out and self-report. Okay. So just putting that out there. Okay, last thing, and then I'll be done. If you are that person, and again, some of you may be watching that maybe had your PMP. I will say what I was able to find out about that is that if you let your PMP lapse, you go into a suspension period, from what I understand, for a year. Within that year, I would contact PMI to get the exact rules and regs, but you still have a little bit of a grace, if you will, within that year's time, to still get your 60 PDUs. Okay, so that you can maintain your certification. So you don't want to go past that. If you go past that, then you're going to be stuck with potentially having to retake that exam again, and you'll be taking it in the latest version, of course. So if you took it 5 years ago, you'll be taking the version that's current as of right now. All right. With that, and I hope you're able to scan the QR code. Hope you're able to go grab that link and give me some feedback. I would love, 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 love to get your feedback on what you heard and what you experienced. Please excuse the coughing. Please excuse the the minor technical difficulties. But I'm going to stop my share. Come back to you while I finish out. I also want this to be not stuffy. I have an affect on how I present, that this is what you get. This is me right here. But I also did not want to be super stuffy and have everything be like extra perfect. Like, I'm going to take another drink of water right now. The last time I did, I choked on it. Let me see. Hold on. Let me see. It worked. Okay. I could drink water on camera and not choke. Okay. But I want it to be a conversation. So I'm hoping that this was helpful to you. We want to be future focused, right? We want to be future focused in whatever it is that we do, whether it is getting our certification so we can take ourselves to that next level, or if it's learning about different AI tools that can also help us be efficient and future focused. All right. So with that, enjoy your Wednesday, enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you soon. Bye.